Welcome to another episode of Frontier Life. Today we go to the Toyota dealership. All right guys, we're at the Toyota lot to see what you get for your money at Toyota. This is a TRD Off-Road Premium. So MSRP on this is $56,318, and then with their addendums they're at $58,513, and that's just with window tint, paint protection film, all the stuff on the sticker here. And I don't know if that is a good value for a mid-size pickup truck. For $56,000, you could probably get them down maybe to $50,000. So for $50,000, you get 4-cylinder turbo engine. Seating position, the seat comfort, the leg room is definitely not as good as it is in the Frontier. I'll show you guys. I set up the seat up front how I would set it up to drive on my Frontier. And let's see how I fit behind myself at 5'11" inside the Tacoma. So there's significantly less leg room. I'm almost touching here, and there's definitely not enough room for your feet here. And also the transmission hump on the Tacoma is larger than in the Frontier. So you really couldn't sit here comfortably in the middle like I was doing in that video that I did, the family-friendly mid-size truck video that I did for the Frontier. So also one thing that I'm finding is that these seats are actually more vertical than they are in the Frontier, which is very interesting. Even though the seats themselves are a little bit longer, you know, your knees still sit up high. They don't really provide you that much more thigh support. And yeah, it's just not comfortable back here. But again, no mid-size truck is that comfortable. Let's go into the front and feel the comfort there. So these plastics in the Tacoma feel a lot cheaper and chintzier than what you'll find in the Frontier. Steering wheel feels pretty good. I might have to actually move it back a little bit more just to give me more space. Steering wheel feels good. Visibility is not as good in the Tacoma. I feel like the windshield is shorter, and the headroom's not as good either. Headroom's not as good inside the Tacoma. Headliner feels cheaper, and these plastics feel cheaper as well. Yeah, it just, for some reason, it just feels more tight and crammed than the Frontier somehow. And I know that on the outside, the Tacoma is actually a little bit wider and taller than the Frontier. I'm not feeling it inside. This screen is nice, but I feel like it intrudes into your visibility. This hood is very long and tall. So again, the visibility out towards the corners isn't the greatest. And overall, you know, these buttons feel nice. You know, it's a nice truck. It just doesn't feel as premium as the Nissan Frontier in a way. These seats, they're Softex. They're a little stiff. I'm actually surprised on how stiff they are. Maybe they soften up. One thing I do know is that they have the ventilation option inside. So they're heated and ventilated, and I think the ventilation option makes them a little bit stiffer. But yeah, for $56,000, let's say you get them down to $50,000. I mean, I just don't know if I would buy this over a Frontier Pro-4X fully loaded that you could probably get, that you can definitely get for $45,000. So you definitely pay the Toyota tax here. But yeah, it just doesn't feel as livable as the Frontier does. And I'm more surprised than I thought I'd be, because I've been inside these trucks several times, and I guess because I did the family-friendly truck video in comparison, and I was inside the truck in the back and the front, this definitely doesn't feel as roomy as the Frontier. Part of it is because of the center stack section here, because the transmission comes up higher. This sits up higher overall. You feel more enclosed. Also, the storage space in here isn't as deep. This is a very small section. And I just like the layout in the Frontier a little bit better. I think you just have better ergonomics. I think you have more space for just random crap. You have the dedicated charging pad over here. This isn't slanted, so in the Frontier it's a flat floor here, so you just get more storage. And then this has the JBL gimmicky thing where it pops out. I mean, I don't understand the reason for that, but again, guys, just wanted to do a quick comparison. Maybe I'll convince someone inside to let me drive this and I can give you some feedback on the driving dynamics, but stay tuned. All right, guys, we're back in the Frontier, and I just wanted to kind of compare the interiors between the Tacoma we just looked at. But the Frontier, just off the bat, what you'll notice is the visibility is much better. The windshield isn't as short, so you just get a lot more visibility out of the front. The seating position in this truck is just nicer. It just, the seats are more cushiony in this one. They don't constrict you as much. I feel like the bolstering in the Tacoma are a little bit more aggressive, so it feels like you're being hugged a little bit more. And if you're a bigger person, I can see how that could be a problem. But overall, the seat comfort's just better in the Nissan Frontier. I think the visibility is too, just overall. Also, the fit and finish of the plastics. Yes, you still have plastic here, but it doesn't feel as cheap or as flimsy or as chintzy as the plastics in the Tacoma. You do get soft touch here, and again, the seats are leather, so these are genuine leather seats. They're really comfortable. And then you just get so much more storage in here versus the Tacoma. And I also just like the layout and ergonomics here, because in the Tacoma you are set up like this because of the charging pad. Here you actually have a nice nook here to put your phone or just extra junk in here, and then you have your dedicated pad here, which you could just also use as some kind of crap holder, as I like to call them. And then let's just go in the back again. So in the rear of the truck, I took the car seats out just to give us a better view, but at 5'11", feet under the seat, just have room, plenty of room. That transmission hump isn't as pronounced in the Frontier, so I can actually move across pretty easily where I can't do that in the Tacoma. And then I just fit nicely in here. Like I don't feel like these seats are any more vertical than they are in the Tacoma. And I don't feel like I get any more or less thigh support here than I do in the Tacoma. It's actually pretty similar in terms of comfort. You just get a lot more leg room. Here, as you can see, I have just so much more leg room than I did in the Tacoma. And yeah, I just feel like this is a much more comfortable, livable truck than that Tacoma, which again is kind of surprising, because I've been inside those Tacomas several times. I've been in those Tacomas a lot, and I just, it's kind of surprising just doing it a back-to-back comparison. And you know, you can get this truck, this Nissan Pro-4X, fully spec'd out with all the packages like this one's spec'd out at. And you can get one for $45,000. You just have to kind of look around and work with Nissan. They're willing to make deals, whereas Toyota's a little bit more hesitant. But let me see if I can find my guy in here, see if he can give us the keys to that Tacoma, and then take it for a spin, and then we can just talk about driving dynamics. Unfortunately, our sales rep did not capture the best audio or video for this section, so we'll be doing a voiceover here. The first thing I noticed while setting off in this Tacoma was the digital gauge cluster was kind of a pain in the ass and not very user-friendly to set up or navigate. However, if you own one of these trucks, you will probably get used to it quite quick and it will be a non-issue. Second thing I noticed right off the bat was just how light and loose the steering feel is. Now, for some people, this might be a non-issue, but if you tow a lot or off-road a lot, you might not appreciate the lack of feedback from the road, or you might just find it a little bit unresponsive. However, it does make the truck feel more nimble than it is. The visibility in the truck, as we've mentioned, isn't the best. The belt line is higher and the windshield's a little bit shorter and more slanted, so it does limit your visibility quite a bit, especially the rear glass, because it is shorter and the size of the seats. Now, the biggest thing for me while driving that I noticed was the back end was more bouncy than I anticipated, especially with it being coilover suspension in the rear. And I just found it more bouncy and jittery than I guess I was hoping for. Now, the biggest takeaway is just the powertrain. The power delivery is pretty good, especially down low with that 317 pound-feet of torque coming in quite early in the rev range at 1700 RPM. And the 8-speed transmission is quite smooth for what it is. The biggest issue, though, is the disconnect or dissonance that I felt between the size of the vehicle and that inline four. It's not that the inline four is underpowered per se, I just don't think it matches the character of the truck. There's almost a tinniness or hollowness that I felt from that inline four after the turbo power down low, after the turbos fell off. It just felt like a rattly inline four that you would find in a Highlander or in a RAV4. And I just felt like there was just a lack of character and soul there, especially for a truck that is as big and imposing as this new Tacoma is. It just left me wanting for more and really wishing that this had a nice V6. But again, that was my biggest takeaway with this powertrain. Just back in the Frontier, what I noticed off the bat is that the Frontier is just so much more quiet than that TRD Off-Road Premium. Even though that TRD Off-Road Premium also has the acoustic glass, this truck just seems a little bit more quiet. It just seems a little bit more composed, even with the leaf springs. And the power is the thing that surprises me the most about the Nissan Frontier. And I guess it's not really a surprise, but it's more of just a confirmation that the V6 and linear V6 power is just so much more enjoyable than the turbo. Tacoma TRD Off-Road is a great truck. It's a great driving truck. I think that they've done a good job, but I just the loose steering coupled with almost there's like a hollowness or deadness within that turbo lag, or there's this lack of power and refinement in that powertrain, in that inline four, that you definitely notice when driving the Tacoma. Back to the Frontier, you just feel like you're driving a more premium powertrain with the Nissan Frontier. Honestly, it just feels like a more premium truck. It's an interesting dynamic, and I wish that I could have gotten better footage from our sales associate at Toyota to really capture the essence of what the Toyota Tacoma is all about. Again, it's not a bad truck, and I think that it's a really solid offering, and it's the truck that I was strongly considering when I was cross-shopping trucks. It really came down to the Tacoma and the Frontier. And again, I was just more blown away almost by how much different the trucks feel. And you know how much different the linear V6 power is compared to that powertrain in the Tacoma. The Tacoma, it feels like a sportier drive in a way because of the quicker steering. It is electric steering, so the electric steering gives it a more nimble feeling per se, even though the turn radius is almost exactly the same. I think what you get with the Tacoma is you get a more imposing stance from the factory. You get a little bit more lift. The clearance on the Tacoma TRD Off-Roads from the factories are almost 11 inches. I think it's 10.8 or 11 exactly. The truck is wider and taller, so you get a little bit more of an imposing feel on and off the road, which gives you this illusion that the truck is beefier than it is. But once you get into the driving dynamics of it, the Frontier just feels like a more premium powertrain. It pulls harder linearly. The Tacoma, once that turbo spools up, you get that torque and that grunt. But overall, it's just not a very refined package. It's very noisy, and to me, it just felt kind of hollow, kind of soulless, and just not, you know, in the long term, I just don't know if I would be happy with that truck. But anyway, guys, just wanted to do a quick comparison for y'all today. Leave your questions or comments down below, and as always, we'll see you on the next one. All right, guys, so I've been sitting on this video for a couple of days now and just thinking about how I wanted to finish it. And the first thing that came to mind was something our realtor told us a couple of years ago when we were buying our first house. And he said, you can't compete with crazy. And what he meant by that is you can't be willing to overpay for a house, even though someone else is willing to do so, especially when that house isn't worth the market value. And I think that rings true for the Toyota Tacoma, but more so than that, I think when looking at these two trucks, it's about two different philosophies that are embodied by each truck. Nissan, either intentionally or through necessity, what they did is they did not redesign completely the Nissan Frontier in the 2022 model year. What they did is they took their tried and true award-winning Alpha frame that they've used on the Titan and the Xterra, and they just strengthened it. They used hydraulic cab mounts, urethane jounce bumpers, more sound deadening, acoustic glass, and created a more modern package, and from the ground up developed a naturally aspirated V6 paired to a 9-speed automatic that are fantastic and purpose-built for a mid-sized truck. What that lent itself to was Nissan creating a very old school feeling truck that was still very modern, that provided competitive power and torque while not completely modernizing their offering and keeping that old school, reliable, hefty truck feel. Historically, Nissan's marketing has left a lot to be desired. They don't leverage their marketing in a way that is appealing. They don't build community around their products. They don't have a strong online presence, and they don't leverage content creators to really drive the marketing behind their products. I think that that's something that definitely hurts Nissan, and historically hasn't helped the Frontier sell more units. Toyota, on the other hand, kind of went with a different philosophy. As you guys know, Toyota, and Tacoma specifically, has been the reliable and mid-size sales king for a couple of years now. And their philosophy as of late has been modernizing their powertrains, modernizing their packaging to make it more efficient, more eco-friendly, and overall more streamlined by going with the TNGA-F platform. But aside from that, what they've done is they've relied heavily on their marketing power to appeal to a larger customer base. A lot of their vehicles on the TNGA-F platform, in fact all of them, ride very similarly. They all have interchangeable parts and they all use the same powertrains for the most part. And I think that just lends itself for Toyota to focus more on marketing and then have a vehicle for everyone. And whether you're in a Tacoma or in a Land Cruiser or in a 4Runner, you're gonna feel right at home. Now, as a consumer, you have to decide which philosophy rings true to you. I think that when we look at historically what a truck is and what a truck is intended to do and why it was created in the first place, I think that Nissan's more robust, tried and true, proven design with the V6 powertrain lends itself more to that old school truck experience, while still having some nice modern and refined touches that I think are very compelling at a very compelling price point, even in this crazy market. The Toyota Tacoma is more tech forward and thinking more about the future and modernization, providing more efficient car-derived engines that are now turbocharged in truck applications, and that's providing you a more efficient and crossover-like ride, especially with a truck that has coil springs in the back. But at the end of the day, you have to decide which philosophy resonates more with you and whether or not you're willing to overpay for one. Thanks for watching.